Okay, well, I just want to thank everybody for coming. Steve Holt, Lake Pondere Waterkeeper, and Carolyn Canuck is with us. She's our associate director, and we have a board member, Dave Hussey, who's also on the Zoom call. So I guess just a few. Look, this is the first time that we've done one of these Zoom things, and so and we have a relatively small crowd. So I'm going to suggest that if somebody does have a question that they want to ask while I'm actually presenting, that we actually allow that to happen. Let's give it a shot, because I think it's just way more engaging than for people to have to wait until the very end to ask something. If we start to get derailed and it starts to take too long, then we can change up mid-course or something. But the presentation itself is relatively quick. I'm not going to take a long time, but and I do want to involve, I do want to engage in some conversation. So given that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I do have a PowerPoint. We have some other folks joining us, it looks like. Okay, let's see here. So can everybody see that? Are we good? Carolyn, can you let me know? Is that working?
Yep, looks good, Steve.
Okay, awesome. So tonight's topic is really the Sand Creek proposed zone amendment from the city of Sandpoint. We'll talk a little bit about shoreline development. And so we'll just sort of like roll into it here. Most everybody who's on the call already knows these things. We've been here since 2009, and I feel like we're really hitting our stride now. I feel like this last year, I feel like people are really starting to pay attention to some of the things that we had to say, and we've had some successes. And I think that we're doing some good work now. I'm proud of our team. It feels good. And as you know, this is we're a part of the Columbia River drainage, and we have quite a territory to cover. And this is one of the things I'll just start, spitballing a little bit here, but some of the things that the board is talking about is, we have a great volunteer monitoring program. Preston and some of you others have helped us with that for a while, but we're also looking at trying to establish this summer a volunteer patrol unit, sort of eyes on the water. And most of the calls that we do get are people who are out there boating around and picking up violations and stuff. So we're going to try and maybe make that a little bit more official. So if you know some folks who have a boat and they're out there and they want to be deputized as a waterkeeper, that would be great. So these are some of the things that we've done. We've been involved in some shoreline cleanups. We've completed our 10th year of water quality monitoring, which we're really proud of. And DEQ is starting to utilize our data more and more. Carolyn created a wonderful lake ecology 6-chapter series, hour long, with a 50-page workbook to get into the classes. So we're going to really start expanding our reach. And then she developed this Waterkeeper Wednesdays, which is a summer program that we started just this last summer. Now we're doing a monthly Keeping Up with the Waterkeeper. So hopefully we'll be able to get back face to face with everybody. And some of the things that we've been working on, certainly stormwater, and that's a big topic for tonight. And then wastewater, I think, is going to be our topic next month. The more I get into the permitting process with the city of Sandpoint and Kootenai Pend and I look at what Schweitzer's doing there, I really think that wastewater and how we handle that is probably our largest potential threat to water quality over the next decade. So I think that's something that our board has talked about focusing in on quite a bit more. We've got two major permits that are coming up. And we've got a failing system definitely over in Kootenai Ponderay, and Boyer Slough is like one of the most polluted pieces of water on the lake. So, and then we've got a lot of shoreline development. We talked last month at the Keeping Up with the Waterkeeper and showed some of the devastation. Oh, you can see some of it over here on the right. That's a parcel that was denuded of a great existing vegetative buffer that they have. And so we're getting more involved in those projects. But this is the one that I really wanted to talk about. So this is Sand Creek. I just snapped these pictures today. You know, this is dear to our hearts for sure, but Carolyn and I are working on top of it every day. So I'm looking out at this view, and this is, you know, to the north here, and you can just see, you know, the existing vegetation and what's happening there right now. And then you look down here, looking south from the bridge, you know, there is still quite a bit of vegetation, you know, here, and then certainly over on the other side, they've done a pretty good job of maintaining that. So it's just, you know, it's a treasure, and it is something that we need to protect, and we need to pay careful attention to how we're developing it. And this ordinance, I believe, I don't know if you caught the article that I had in the Reader today, but I really do believe that now this, you know, the language that we're coming up with now is going to dictate what this scene looks like for the next 25 to 50 years or more. So I think we want to get it right. So just in terms of like how the presentation is intended to sort of go, I wanted to give everybody a little bit of history on how we got to this place where we are right now, what the current code really says. I want to talk a little bit about just the stormwater management and the types of stormwater management that we've been in conversation with the city about. And then we'll take a look at the first draft of the proposed amendment. And then they made a modification to that based on some concerns that we had. And then I want to talk a little bit about the potential ramifications of what that language, the types of development that language could bring. And then we'll talk about a potential solution. And then we can talk a little bit about what, you know, what are some of the action items and what are some of the things that you guys and your friends and our friends can actually do. So this is a off of the City of Sandpoint GIS map, and I just wanted to show this slide just to kind of give everybody a sense of, you know, what parcels of property are actually affected by this code, so we're kind of clear on that. And this code essentially will have an effect on all the commercially zoned properties, commercial A, B, and C, okay? And so commercial A is all this purple over here that you see. So along Sand Creek, it's all the way down to the marina. There's the Cedar Street Bridge. And then coming up, there's a little bit of residential property sort of right in here, and then you're back to commercial B. And so all this property here would be affected, including this chunk up here. So we're looking at really the development just beyond the Highway 200 bridge, all the way down to where the bypass crosses here. So those are the properties that we're talking about. And so right now, currently, I'm just going to read this. Okay, this is what the current code says about structures along the creek. Structures along Sand Creek shall maintain a 25-foot vegetative setback from the high water mark of the creek, as established at full summertime pool elevation of 2062. Uncovered porches and pervious decks may encroach into this setback a minimum of 15 feet. And then structures utilizing this encroachment shall maintain permeable erosion control material on any encroached upon control material on any encroached upon. That's not working too well. Anyway, a maximum 5-foot improved pervious sidewalk to any pedestrian pathway connecting to Sand Creek is exempt from the vegetative buffer requirement. So in our opinion, this actually works pretty well. You know, it says that you have to maintain a 25-foot vegetative buffer, but there are some allowances for minor improvements that have pervious surfaces. And so we're actually, you know, if we were just to stay with this, okay, we would actually be in pretty good shape, or at least we wouldn't have people developing within it. So how did all this start? So it started all the way back in 2012 in the Downtown Streets Plan and Design Guide. And as you can see here, this is where they were trying to understand whether to provide parking and how much parking they wanted to provide behind the buildings just to the south of the Canada Theater there. And so they had these three concepts sort of drawn up. This one doesn't have any parking. This one has a lot of parking, and this one has some parking. And each one of these, there is the development of this piece that the city acquired from the Farm and Trust. So the city purchased this from the trust, and now they're conceptualizing, you know, what kind of an improvement they're going to make. And so this is back in 2012. And actually none of these, as you can see, encroach beyond the existing boardwalk. This is the existing boardwalk right here. So all of these projects are actually to the west of the boardwalk and nothing out over Sand Creek. And so now comes along the 2020 Park and Recreation Master Plan. And so this is what is currently being looked at, although we had a workshop today, and really this is a conceptual design. They're going to have to go through a number of rounds of public comment before any of this can actually take place. The city is also trying to purchase this property here from the trust right now, and they feel somewhat confident that's actually going to happen. So this is just a conceptual design for a plaza type setting with some entertainment, and it would actually, this whole discussion started with a $25,000 grant from the Lore Foundation for the city to explore innovative stormwater treatment. I see somebody's trying to get in here. Stormwater treatment, which the city still contends that it's interested in doing. So that's good news. So when we talk about the stormwater treatment, I want to be clear, and I wanted to kind of show this image. This is excuse me. This is off of the city's website, okay? And right now, when you look at the kind of vegetative buffer that we have in that particular area there, all it really is a steeply sloped green lawn shedding right to the water. I mean, we're getting like nothing out of it, okay? So, and the stormwater outfall that is currently underneath the zigzaggy ramp and the stairs that access the boardwalk there actually takes all of the stormwater from the downtown core, from Main Street, like all the way over to the north of Cedar Street. And we calced it out the other day, and there's like a 28, that basin actually has 28 acres of surface area there that are going to be going into, that go into Sand Creek currently. And so this second image is the one that I feel like we're really pushing for. It's this guy right here. And right now it looks like just a concrete box, but really inside there, what happens is they put these pods and essentially filters that filter out, you know, 95% and more of all the nutrients. Did you want to say something, Carolyn? Is there something? No. Okay. There's a filtration system that actually goes inside this vault. Okay, and it does a way better job than any vegetative buffer that we could have. So this is the kind of treatment that I feel like we're kind of pushing for. And this is also from the city's website. And you can see that, you know, from this picture, they actually have some pretty nice ideas. I mean, I think this looks good. You have, you know, you have a vegetative buffer and a landscaped shoreline. You have, this is simulating that concrete tank that we're looking at here that has the filtration system in it. They've got vegetative buffer here with some pervious surfaces. So the picture actually works pretty well. Unfortunately, the code amendments that they're proposing don't incentivize developers to do this at all. And so there's that, you know, they're sort of at odds with each other. So I wanted to go back and just touch on some of the things that just alerted us right away. So this is just one page of a 4-page document. The other 3 pages really, you know, they don't really carry a lot of weight. I mean, there's some good explanation. There's a change, a few definitions here and there, you know, mainly things that we can support, you know, but it's this page in particular on the first one that I wanted to just sort of highlight. And so this section up here is section C. Okay, it talks about, they also define this downtown waterfront, okay, as, and the definition is actually down here, but simply put, it's from the marina to the Cedar Street Bridge, has its own little section there. And then north of the bridge going up, you know, is the finish. So there's a couple of differences in the rule, but mainly it's the whole thing that we're concerned about. So this first round, they were saying that essentially all buildings, okay, in the downtown waterfront area will be allowed to go right down to the ordinary high water mark of the creek. So the entire vegetative setback could have been wiped out, and you could have a concrete foundation wall and a 3-story building right at the edge of the creek, okay? And that's what this language would promote. And then it defines other structures like plazas, walkways, and other functionally dependent water uses, which are like docks and piers and boardwalks and things like that, to actually encroach out over the water, okay, permitted with a conditional use permit. And the problem with the conditional use permit on this piece of it is that there's no criteria in the commercial zone for a conditional use permit. When you go to the city code, you'll see that for residential and multifamily and all the other zones, there is criteria that a conditional use permit would look at, but not for a commercial zone. So that it ends up becoming kind of a moot point there. So that was the First Amendment. So then we went to them and said, this is crazy. You know, you can't allow, how can you allow buildings, you know, to get down, you know, all the way to the high water mark? You know, what is going on here? And so they actually heard us and basically pulled back on that. And so then they decided that they would pull the buildings back, but they would allow structure to be out in the vegetative buffer and or the 25-foot setback. And so here, this is basically just a section that defines the high water mark and ordinary high water mark, and they go through a lot of verbiage to try and make that happen. And I think it's fine. Basically, artificial high water mark is the one that we're going by, because down in this part of the creek, we're basically at 2062, like the other code said. An ordinary high water mark would be up creek where the water actually fluctuates. So ordinary high water mark in those instances would be higher. So I think that's all good. The buildings now, they said, okay, well, we hear you on that. Buildings shall be set back a minimum of 25 feet from the artificial high water mark. So that's a victory, in some ways. They were listening to us in that regard. So that felt pretty good. But then where things start to go crazy, and this has brought up a lot of questions from the Planning Commission, and when you really start to dive into it, there's a lot of problems. And what it happens is that what we're talking about here is all the structures, except for buildings, okay, which include all the plazas and stairways and everything, may be constructed below the high water mark again, with the issuance of a conditional use permit, which we pointed out to them that doesn't work. But then structures may also be constructed above the high water mark. So this is like in that 25-foot setback, right, as permitted by the Sandpoint stormwater ordinance. And so the city was sort of relying, or communicated to us, that they were relying on the stormwater ordinance to be able to dictate the kinds of projects that could actually be constructed in that area. And so when you go and you read the ordinance itself, it's a very comprehensive document, or a section of the code that does a really great job for upland development, and development that has space enough to be able to create filtration systems that allow for some conditioning of stormwater before it's put into the lake. But unfortunately, there's nothing in there that's really specific to the kinds of projects that we're talking about. And we've seen, down below Spuds, was a classic example of a brand new project that got built below the high water mark with a completely impervious surface sheeting right off into the creek with no additional stormwater management at all, right? And so, so where do we go from here? And this, by the way, the Planning Commission was looking at this, and rightfully so, with a lot of questions. And what you could end up with here, if you were to adopt this code, is you could end up with essentially a concrete shoreline, with a retaining wall of unlimited height, with a impervious surface for the entire 25-foot vegetated setback, and not do anything to incentivize developers to accomplish the goals that the city has set out to accomplish with this. So I want to just, before I explain this one, I wanted to say that the main reason why the city is even doing this, and I don't know, I skipped by a couple slides there, I just forgot to mention it, but is that they realize that their new project actually violates the code. And so they've been trying to tell me that, that's the real incentive for them to be able to do this. And from a stormwater management perspective, Steve Holt, and the Lake Pend Oreille Waterkeeper, we actually want Farman's Landing to happen because we want the stormwater improvement for the 28 acres of the downtown core. So it's really a water quality issue in that regard. And so if there is a development that can happen there that's going to enhance, the aesthetic, provide public access, and improve the water quality there, we think it's a good project. So that was the incentive for them. And some of the goals, the main goals that they kept touting, if you go to their website and listening to them this morning talk about it and everything, is they're really trying to communicate that they care a lot about the stormwater, and that is a big part of it. And then the other thing is that they really want to try and provide some public access for as much of the creek as they can. And right now we've got public access that runs all the way from the marina all the way up to the Canada Theater, and that wants to get extended up to the bridge, and then potentially could be extended, beyond, right? And so I actually know several very savvy, land planners and politicians in my past life, and I have had some discussions with them about this issue to try and figure out, like, if there is a better solution. And as it turns out, it was really pretty simple, and that was that if we're trying to incentivize a developer to provide public access, and we're trying to get them to have some enhanced stormwater management, that if a project is determined by the city, by its definition, to have a public benefit, okay, with certain criteria, of which simply could be, or the ones that we really want would be that the developer provide public access through that area, and that they would actually improve and enhance stormwater management. So if we get them to put in a catch basin with the same filtration system that we have over at Farm and Landing, all of a sudden we have a situation where we're like doing a way better job of protecting our water. And then we're also incentivizing the developer to actually spend the money to provide the public access. And there could be a lot of other different criteria there too. So anyway, that's something that I think that, I want to talk to everybody about that and see how they feel about it, for sure. But I think that's something that we're going to be moving the city towards here shortly, or just that idea. So anyway, I wanted to share that. And then really at this point, what you can do is, we just need to write letters to the editor. There's no hearing scheduled yet. They postponed this whole matter until after the election. So as soon as the election's over, then it's going to be back. It's going to be an issue again. And so we just want to be ready for it. And so one of these Fridays, we're going to find out that it's going to be on the agenda on that Wednesday, and then we're all going to need to react. However, in the meantime, Carolyn and I are going to put together a couple of just brief sample letters, and we're going to email everybody out. So you don't have to worry about writing any of this down here now. We'll go ahead and email everybody this intel. And basically, if we can, I think it's going to go to the city council, and it's going to be a city council decision on this. And if we can get the city council to see that there's a lot of questions still around the existing language, then we can get some additional workshops to spend the time to craft language that we're going to be able to live with for the next decade and more. So we encourage everybody to actually get out there and vote. Part of the Lake Pend Oreille Waterkeeper is endorsing, the lot tax primarily because of this stormwater improvement. I mean, you're talking, it'll be $1 million in filtration system, and it's going to take some additional funding to really make it happen. So that's that part of it. And this is a little bit about the tax itself, as I was just saying. So it helps fund the parks, the open space, and the filtration system for stormwater. So yeah, if you could do that, it would be great. And then the other thing that we've tried to set up, and Carolyn is batting a high percentage of success on these technical things, but we do have a short survey that it would be great for people to fill out and give us some suggestions on how we can better manage our Zoom meetings if we have to have them in the future, or and just give us some ideas on some other topics that you may want to talk about. So I'm going to stop the sharing of my screen now, and then we can talk about it, or I can answer questions, or maybe just, does everybody know how to raise their hand? Maybe you do. Okay. So
Feel free to use the chat to ask questions, or at the bottom of your screen, there might be like a reactions button, and there you can raise your hand or put a thumbs up or whatever. But feel free to utilize the chat, and or if you have questions afterwards, you can contact me and Steve, and we can ask you questions. And like he said, we're going to be sending out an email to everyone with information that we included on the presentation, such as like what actions you can take, as well as a sample email. Pat, do you have a question?
Yes, is that tax for city residents only?
Mm-hmm.
Would that election be for just city residents?
no, I mean, oh yes, city residents only can vote, but 85% of the money that's raised is actually coming from people who are out of the city and tourist dollars. So county and all the tourists, so it's like a 1% tax on a sales tax. Essentially, it's the same mechanism that they use for the Memorial Field project and the improvements that they made there. Same type of thing. There's like a 12 million, they figure they'll raise about 12 to 13 million dollars just with the tax, and then they can actually leverage those dollars on grants to get more. So it's a little unknown, but there's like several millions of dollars in addition to that that will be available if the tax passes. Anybody else got anything? You guys must have something.
I appreciate all this work that you've done. It's terrific, and certainly something that every one of us should support.
Yeah, great. How do you feel like it affects the Canada there, since all that's going on right down there? How's that feeling for you?
Well, I think if we can get that farm and trust area waterfront going, I think that'll help the Canada. And I think that we can have the lot line for the little theater goes out quite a ways, and we could have a little outdoor theater there and do something in the summer would be another possibility. Of course, again, with correct water treatment in the water caching so that it doesn't pollute. But most cities really take care of their waterfront, and they don't have it lined up as a parking lot. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about Victoria or any place. So our way we've handled our waterfront is kind of sad, and I'm all for the city plan.
Yeah, great. No, I think that's a great idea on the theater piece. I mean, part of their plaza idea is to provide some sort of like small outdoor entertainment venue. And so maybe, I mean, they're going to be holding a series of workshops to discuss, what the exact design of that turns out to be. So, if your board is participating along the way, you might have some say in how that goes, and might be able to utilize, the public asset, from a.
Where do we find out about that mostly, Steve, in Sandpoint Online, or where do we make sure that we don't miss these important meetings? Will you have all of our emails now?
Yeah,
Carol?
we'll have your email. We can let people know we'll let all of our supporters know when the workshops are for that particular piece. I think that certainly the reader has been on top of all of that, and you just have to stick your nose into the papers, but we can notify people of when those meetings are. I think it's important to get the design right on that for sure. above and beyond water quality, for my own personal interest, but yeah, we can keep you informed on that.
Was my speaker giving you feedback? I'm just wondering about that.
Oh,
Been okay?
sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Patty had a couple questions. Steve, did you see those in the chat?
No. Chat. Can you send over? Oh, there we go. Yeah, so one thing would be for Steve to know more about how to operate his Zoom. Isn't the east side of Sand Creek a model for public access and stormwater control? Or is the city's motivation commercial development increased tax rates? The east side, yeah, Patty, the east side is a model for public access. And they have a nice vegetative buffer there too. And they did a nice gabion wall that has vegetation. So some of the water that's spilling off in the bypass there too, does get filtered. So yeah, it is good. The meetings you attended also discussed a possible upstream connection to propose Sand Creek. Maybe here's what I'm gonna do. If you, instead of would those of you who are typing the questions, would you guys mind raising your hand and just saying them? Because I got like a bunch of them here now, and it's they're jumping around, and it's a little difficult for me to read it and try and digest. So we only have a few of us here. If we could just talk.
So Steve, I asked the question about the Sand Creek Greenbelt. Do you know anything about that?
No, I don't.
I think they talked about it briefly this morning about connecting it. Because they talked about using the boardwalk that right now goes from like Farman's Landing down just to Bridge Street and then up to the bridge that goes over Cedar Street Bridge or over Sand Creek. And they talked about extending that into or towards Cedar Street Bridge and then potentially to the hospital. But I don't think they mentioned the green belt on kind of the west side of the creek. I think the connection is more on the east side where that path already exists.
What is the green belt, George?
It's my understanding that it's a proposal that was put forth 2006 maybe by the city of Ponderay to create it like a bike path from maybe the Schweitzer Creek, the Schweitzer Mountain Road down into Sandpoint. And it's my understanding that people are beginning to have meetings and my general concern is just with the impacts on habitat, further up the creek. And so I wasn't sure if this was part of an interlocking plan that folks have worked out between Ponderay and Sandpoint.
I don't believe so.
I have some input on that.
Good.
The Native Plant Society has one of our board members has been attending the trail mix meetings and has been championing the extension of the Sand Creek Trail from the Popsicle Bridge up to the Schweitzer Cutoff Road. And he's been in discussions with the mayor of Ponderay, and he's kayaked the whole distance. And there's a lot of enthusiasm for it, but there's a lot of property owners from Popsicle Bridge up to the Schweitzer Cutoff Road that would have to be engaged in the process. But that's going on in the Trail Mix Committee.
Great.
Actually, Preston, Mark and I kayaked it the other day.
Okay, Mark. Okay.
He told me about this meeting, and there's going to be a subcommittee meeting tomorrow that I'm going to attend. And so I wasn't sure if, the two cities were kind of coordinating on quote unquote public access.
Well, I think the city of Sandpoint is part of the Trail Mix Committee.
Right.
And I don't know if, is the Waterkeeper part of that group, Steve?
No, and I haven't, heard much about that particular effort, and I don't think that this particular amendment does not pertain at all to that area because it's the commercial zone only goes up so far. Now, that's not to say that, the city of Sandpoint isn't in conversation with Ponderay about extending, sort of like what they did over on the Ponderay Bay Trail. And I think that that sort of connectivity in their plans, that's something that, we want them to have some discussion around too. And but I don't think there's no backdoor deal or anything like that that they're trying to like pull a fast one over everybody. I don't think.
I think these are separate. As you say, I think these are separate.
Yeah, separate things. Yeah.
Separate.
Yeah, I knew they were, but I just wasn't sure if you had sit in on any discussions where these two projects were talked about in conjunction with each other.
No. Thank you for that, though. Appreciate it. Does anybody else have any?
Jeff has a question. Do you want to speak or do you want us to read your question, Jeff?
I don't know. I don't have a great internet connection. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that we can hear you.
Okay. My question was, I had a two-parter here, but I may have missed this because I came in a little late. But if the tax isn't passed, is there still going to be stormwater work done, or is it just completely dropped? Like how much that part's depending on the tax?
I think that's a great question, and I am fearful that if the tax does not pass, that we won't get nearly the stormwater treatment than we would if it did pass. I think they'll end up, it's going to be hard for them to swallow $1 million improvement. Right now, I think they have 400,000 just to get it started. But 400,000 on a project like that's probably going to get them the design, and then it's going to be millions after that. So not only will stormwater management sort of get thrown into jeopardy, but also the scale of what they can do there, I think, will be affected tremendously. That's just my personal opinion. They haven't said anything about it, but yeah.
The second part is more of a conjecture here. The passing of that code, was it being written to attract or let's say grease the way for bigger developers that could help the city raise the money that they might need to finish that project?
I do think that has something to do with it. I do think that there are some people that, and this is speculation on my part, that there are some people that are in discussions with the city about improvements to their buildings downtown that may wanted to build out to, the full extent of their property line or shoreline. And I think that the city is definitely influenced by that. They're contending that's not the case. But they sold and traded a shoreline property right to the north of the Bridge Street, the whole building on the corner there where the Hound burnt down. The city turned around. We fought this, some time ago, but they gave the developer waterfront, their property, waterfront, all the way down to the water, just for an additional 4 or 5 feet of sidewalk easement that would go up to First Avenue there from the bridge. And so that development is being engineered right now. So there are a few of those that are out there that are happening. They could have played a role in influencing the language that they're proposing. So,
Steve, I've got a
Thank
question.
you.
I've got a question. Does the stormwater aspect of the tax cover any of the stormwater other than just the farm and landing site?
no,
Is it broader than that?
no, it's
Just the farm and landing.
just specific to that particular project.
And so that's only a small fraction of the stormwater for the whole city.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
but relatively significant. And the thing is, to me, it sets the stage, because if we can get them to start using this, innovative filtration system in one location, Gray, we got that 319 grant from the EPA to put in the catch basin up in Ponderay, and it's that same type of thing. So if we can prove that it works, the city has to equipment up to be able to maintain it. They might as well start putting those things in. They could replace manhole covers in town with them every time they pull up the street. They could do it. And so we could systematically go around the entire city, excuse me, and have a great filtration system. So this would be the first one. And I think it would go a long ways to doing that. But right now, yes, this is it. It's only that.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, well, seeing none, thank you everybody for coming.
Hey, Steve.
Oh,
Steve, there's one from Patty and Preston. Are there any EPA regs, or is it the Clean Water Act relevant to the Sand Creek development? Do you know that, Steve? I'm not sure.
yeah, basically, so IDL, right, and the Army Corps of Engineers essentially are the jurisdictions that handle everything that is out over the water. So while the city may think and is writing code around it, those guys are really the ones that somebody will have to go through to either extend their project out into the water and or build any sort of like boat dock or ramp or anything like that. And so they have to get a 404 permit from those two agencies. The problem we're finding is that that is a very easy thing to do, okay? And while it sounds like it's like super complicated and, we're all going to be protected by the Department of Lands and by the Army Corps of Engineers and by the EPA, bottom line is, we got nothing there. We're fighting them all over the place on stuff that they're like allowing. So I don't have a lot of sense of security around that. And so I think it's better for us to like take care of ourselves on this, right? And so that's the sad truth that I'm finding out anyway. So sorry for that. Well, thanks you guys, really, really appreciate it. And so there's supposed to be a survey as soon as this meeting ends and I click end somehow or you leave, magically this like survey is supposed to appear. Okay, so if it does, fill it out. If it doesn't, we'll send it to you later. Okay, and Gray, maybe you can let us know whether you get it or not and then whether it worked, right? So we'll have a sense, because once we end the meeting.
Yep, we'll do.
Okay, great.
Oh,
Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you everyone for coming.
Preston, thanks for all your work this year.
Yeah, thanks, Preston.
Oh, Patty.
Way to keep up with the Waterkeeper. Woohoo.